So the focus of today's practice is partially rooted in one of the elements that empire, modernity, colonialism inoculates inside of our bodies, which is the constant body understanding and mental understanding that we're in a race. We're always racing against things and people, racing against time, constantly against it. How much can you squeeze in? How fast can you go? And racing against people competitively. Can you outpace them, outlast, do it better, make more money, get better grades? Like, how much can you win in this race of life? And we have lots of tools to get better at exiting, unwinding this race in our body, starting to slow down and have different paradigms for understanding things. But first, it's important to understand what this race feels like in our bodies and also what this race is doing to us. A really amazing teacher about this kind of race is Martín Prechtel, who I want to read a little bit of this excerpt to you today. Actually, a lot of this excerpt because it's really rich. But before I dive into it, I was just curious to hear, and I'm going to give a minute for you to silently think. If racing, this feeling of racing does show up in your life, currently or in the past, what does it feel like? Or how do you notice it showing up and affecting you? So that's kind of a question for y'all. I'm just going to give a minute to let you think or notice if anything arises that feels worth sharing. I really enjoy bringing in wisdom teachers so that it's not just us speaking, but also we have infusions from the outside. And I would love to read this to you. I ask you to ask yourself, how does it feel best to have something like this read to you? Do you like to get in the kindergarten position, pretend you're on the magic rug and close your eyes and listen? Or do you like to have a pen or a pencil and you're underlining and highlighting things very actively? Think about what suits you the most, and I will take you on a journey. My voice isn't as sultry and seductive as Martín's. But if you ever get a chance to listen to his audiobooks, it's an incredible voice. This is from The Unlikely Piece at Cuchamaquick. If you've been in other events with me, you'll notice I read a lot of different quotes from this book. It's a really good one. For a little context where I'm starting this, he's describing the way that the indigenous teenagers on the reservation engage in running. When the old people were asked by the outsiders what happened to the runners, sidebar, this is because the runners don't stay on the track and they can't keep track of them and they don't know quite where they went. It's not like a normal race. They were courteously informed that they were probably running, and would the visitor please sit down and eat with them. Such feasting was not only an honor for visitors and one that was expected in the house of the family of the runners, an honor that comes with an obligation to accept whether or not one is hungry. It was a way for the non-running population of the village to magically give strength to the runners. This custom still lives on in every pueblo to this day. When further interrogation as to where the finish line was, the people usually said, whenever they stop running, I guess. Maybe eventually a more compassionate and patient younger person would tell the visitors the truth. There is no finish line. They're just running. And how do they know who wins? And how do they know when to stop running? And why do they run at all? If someone actually broke the rules of tribal secrecy and told them that the sun and the moon and other beings that move in time and give us life are kept strong by the boys who run. And because the sun annually runs his own race and helps the animals to thrive by doing so. And that the sun tires, and when he tires, the world and all animal beings begin to flag and die. And without the animals, we would die. And the running of the boys helps the sun to keep moving and strong, and the visible world strong. And that the moon runs even harder, but in a different pulse, and by doing so keeps all the waters flowing, the plants growing and maturing, without which we and everything else, especially the animals, die. And because for both the sun and the moon in the sky there are no finish lines, they must keep moving, or the world dies. For if there were a finish line, the universe would cease. For if there were a finish line, the universe would cease. So the beauty and strength of the boys running helped lift again these gods back into their eternal continuum, so the world wouldn't die. And though in some way the boys did compete to outdo each other, to outdo the other in beauty, strength, and dedication, there was still no finish line, just an excellent running, as long as it took, until the gods had revived enough to do it themselves, and so the world revived by the boys running would be the winner. Then, the friendly explainer would be met by a menagerie of Anglo reactions, ranging anywhere from indifference to contempt to a stirring admiration by those who could feel the terrible heartbreak of the enormous distance their ancestors must have drifted from their own versions of a natural life long ago. Civilization's spiritual fear of being left behind insists that its constituents unquestioningly race to survive. Civilization's spiritual fear of being left behind insists that its constituents unquestioningly race to survive, running only to ambitiously outstrip their neighbors instead of competing together to sustain nature by feeding the beauty of a human, racing to the holy. The running of these young people was a grand thing, and they, just like all the weather and every natural phenomenon, animal, plant, river, ocean, air, earth, every natural thing, who each run their own races to keep all their own diverse particles of magnificence of a world made whole and alive by doing so. The running boys would come into the feast of life when it was time for them to come. And so it was, for when the race had subsided, each boy returned to his home, and together we all ate the food that we knew was kept alive by his running. Everything in nature ran according to its own nature. The running of the grass was in its growing, the running of the rivers in their flowing. Granite bubbled up, cooled, compressed, and crumbled. Birds lived, flew, sang, and died. Everything did what it needed to do, each simultaneously running its own race, each living according to its own nature together, never leaving any other part of the universe behind. The world's holy things raced constantly together, not to win anything over the next, but to keep the entire, surging, diverse motion of the living world from grinding to a halt, which is why there is no end to that race, no finish line. That would be oblivion to all. For the indigenous souls of all people who can still remember how to be real cultures, life is a race to be elegantly run, not a race to be competitively won. It cannot be won. It is the gift of the world's diverse, beautiful motion that must be maintained. Because human life has been given the gift of our elegant motion, whether we limp or roll or crawl or stroll or fly, it is an obligation to engender the elegance of motion in our daily lives in service of maintaining life, by moving and living as beautifully as we can. All else has, to me, the familiar taste of that domineering, warlike harshness that daily tries to cover its tracks in order to camouflage the deep ruts of some old, sick, grinding, ungainly need to flee away from the elegance of our original indigenous human souls. Our attempt to avariciously conquer or win a place where there are no problems, whether it be heaven or a new democracy, never mind if it is spiritually ugly and immorally won, and taken from someone who is already there, has made a sidifying world of people who, unconscious of it, have become our own ogreish problem to ourselves, our future, and the world. This is a problem that we cannot continue to attempt to competitively outrun by more and more effectively designed technological approaches to speed away from the past, for the specter of our own earth-wasting reality runs grinning competitively right alongside us. By developing even more effective and entertaining methods of escape that only burn up the earth, the air, animals, plants, and the deeper substance of what it should mean to be human, by competing to get ahead, we have created a breakless competition that has outrun our innate beauty and marked out a very definite and imminent finish line. There's more to be read on your own at home, and you're welcome to take these back. I want to lead you before we go outside in a bit of a visualization to find your own mantra. So before you get into place, I want to integrate these teachings from Martín today into our preparation for our outdoor animist work by saying that this possibility to step outside of the race to be competitively won and instead live into a race to be beautifully run is an option inside of us. It's definitely working in opposition to the machinery that's pushing us in a different direction constantly, as we were talking about earlier. But we have different practices and different tools to help ground us in a slower moment. And so one of the things we can use, one of the many things we can use, is mantra. Mantra is a repetitive phrase that allows us to be a gentle parent of the over-processing of all the thoughts happening in our mind. These thoughts are often the ones that keep us in the race. These are the thoughts that are like, keep going, go faster, you're late, you're not winning, more money, more competition. And instead of allowing these thoughts to enter a battle with a different part of us who's like, stop, shut up, stop, shut up. Instead, a mantra is like the warm, demanding parent who's like, let's do something else. What if we do something else? Hey, look over here. Let's do something else. And a good mantra centers us and our attention and our focus and our awareness on the thing that we'd like to be centered on. For this visualization, I invite you to get really comfortable. You don't have to be right here if you don't want. If you want to lie down somewhere or sit up, just make sure that your joints are comfortable, that your toes and your fingers are comfortable. An exaggerated wiggle. Notice the parts of you that want a little more focus and attention, helping them melt into the ground with the help of gravity. And I invite you to begin this by finding the place where the breath enters your body. And after taking a really big, juicy breath through this place, tracing the movement of the air as it enters. With each inhale, trace the movement of air in your body and allow it to enable your muscles to get heavier and heavier, sinking more deeply against the ground that holds you up in collaboration with the force of gravity. In this space of awareness, I invite you to pull up in your mind's eye, either through visual and or through body feeling. What does racing feel like to you? What does it feel like to race against time, against people, against standards? What does it look like and or what does it feel like? Notice what images arise. Bring awareness to whatever body sensations arise. Bring awareness to your noticings as indicators. These are indicators that your body and mind give you to let you know that you're racing. Take note of these indicators like a non-judgmental scientist taking note of environmental indicators of a phenomenon. What happens in your chest? What happens in your belly? What colors or images or sensations arise as you're competing against life? And now we take an arm and sweep over this image. We clear it. We begin to sweep over it, bringing it down, feeding it back to the earth, opening up the space in a clearing, focusing back on the breath, drawing in air. And in this new place, I invite you to ask the body and the mind, what does the opposite of racing feel like? What does it feel like to run for the beauty, to run to keep the earth alive, to run for excellence and love? With no finish line. Notice what you feel in your body. Notice what images arise. As you ask yourself, what does it feel like to run for beauty and the perpetuation of life with no finish line? What does the opposite of racing feel like? If the sun and the moon had a finish line, the earth would cease to exist. Allow yourself to feel into their cycles of exuberance and rest, cycling and cycling in their seasons. What does the opposite of racing feel like? What does it feel like to live for the beauty? Who can teach you what this feels like in the forest? What teachers are you looking to make companionship with on your walks to help you remember what it feels like to run for the beauty of life and not for the competitive race? In this space you've been in, where you're feeling into the somatic feelings and the psychic images of the opposite of racing, I invite you to look in and pull out of this place an intention or a mantra. This is a repetitive phrase that focuses your attention on the axis of grounding you would like to put your awareness in. It often cycles in the rhythm of one phrase as you're breathing in and another phrase connected as you're breathing out. It might sound something like, as you're breathing in, I run freely. As you're breathing out, I feed life. It could be a lot more simple. Breathing in, the word peace. Breathing out, the word focus. Once you find a phrase, I invite you to begin repeating it to the rhythm of your in-breath and your out-breath in your mind. And it's okay if you don't feel your mantra now. It can be a prayer. It can be an intention, something you're working towards. Breathing in, I am a mountain. Breathing out, I am whole. I'm going to transition to letting you know the focus of today's walk while you're still lying down. So, and the feel of your footsteps between the utterings of the mantra. You might choose to slowly integrate the senses and indulge in the world after you've gotten a good hold on the rhythm of the mantra, inviting in sound, inviting in sight, inviting in touch and feeling. Once you've gotten in a good pace with the mantra and your breath and the footsteps, and noticing what arises within and without. In today's focus, the point is to use the mantra as a peaceful, gentle parent or a warm demander of the racing thoughts. Very similar to offering a child a healthy distraction when they're tantruming, rather than yelling at them. And you can allow the mantra to be the parent you come back to over and over when you get distracted. Not punishing yourself, not berating yourself, just coming back. If you need help finding a mantra before you head out today, hang back and I'll help you come up with one that feels good to you. And it's okay to switch halfway through if you find one that you're like, this is hitting me more deeply. Are there any questions before you head out today? You may choose on your phones to set a timer